Here's why Tier 1 solar panel is one of the most misleading terms in the entire industry. It sounds like a grade, like an A instead of a B, like the best of the best. Companies slap it on their websites, installers use it in every sales pitch, and homeowners spend weeks comparing Tier 1 versus Tier 2 versus Tier 3, thinking they're comparing quality. They're not. Tier 1 has nothing to do with how good your panel is, nothing to do with how long it'll last, nothing to do with how much power it makes. It's actually a rating that was built for banks, not for you. And once you understand what it's really measuring, the whole way you shop for solar changes. So today we're going to break down what Tier 1 actually means, why brand names matter way less than everyone thinks, and what you should actually be paying attention to before you spend $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 on a solar system. This is going to save you from making a decision based on a label that was never designed with you in mind. Let's start with the basic problem. If you've ever shopped for solar panels, you've probably seen them sold in tiers. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. And most people assume this is some kind of official quality scale, like a report card for solar companies. So naturally, people chase Tier 1. They think, if I pay more for Tier 1, I'm getting the best possible product, the safest bet, the smart choice. That seems logical, right? Here's the problem. Nobody explains where this rating actually comes from or what it's actually measuring. And once you find out, it changes everything about how you should be shopping. So let's dig into where this term even comes from. Tier 1 wasn't invented by some panel testing lab checking how well solar cells perform in the sun. It was created by Bloomberg, specifically a research group called Bloomberg NF, which is part of Bloomberg, the financial company. And it wasn't made for homeowners. It was made for banks. Here's exactly what a company has to do to be called Tier 1. They have to have sold their own branded panels they actually manufacture themselves, to at least 6 different solar projects. And those 6 projects have to be financed by 6 different banks with a specific type of loan called non-recourse financing. That's it. That's the whole test. Read that again. It's not a test of how efficient the panel is. It's not a test of how many years the panel lasts before it degrades. It's not a test of how well it holds up in hail or heat or humidity. It's a test of whether 6 different banks were willing to lend money on 6 different projects using that company's panels. Why does that matter to a bank? Because banks are financing massive solar farms, sometimes worth $50 million or more, and they want assurance that the company supplying the panels is financially stable enough to still be around, and to actually stand behind their product for the life of that loan. Tier 1 is basically a credit score for solar manufacturers. It tells a bank, this company is safe to lend against. It was never meant to tell you, the guy putting panels on his roof, whether you're getting quality. And here's something that makes this even weirder. Bloomberg updates this list every single quarter. So a company can be Tier 1 this quarter and drop off the list next quarter. It's not permanent. It's not a lifetime achievement. It's a snapshot that can change every 3 months based on financing activity that has nothing to do with what's happening to the panels already sitting on your roof. Also, and this is something a lot of people don't realize, Bloomberg doesn't even publish an official Tier 2 or Tier 3 list. Those terms are basically industry slang that installers and retailers made up on their own. So when a company tells you this is a Tier 2 panel, that's not based on any official standard at all. It's just marketing language borrowed from a real classification and applied loosely to make you feel like you understand the quality difference, when in reality, nobody's actually measuring anything. So if Tier 1 is just a bank rating, why does everyone treat it like a badge of quality? Because it's an easy story to tell. Tier 1 inch sounds official. It sounds tested. It sounds safe. And most buyers don't have the time or the background to dig into where that label actually comes from. So the story just gets repeated over and over until it becomes accepted as fact. Now, only about 2% of solar panel manufacturers in the entire world actually qualify as Tier 1. 2%. That number gets used to make Tier 1 sound exclusive and elite, like these are the best of the best. But think about what we just walked through. 98% of manufacturers aren't excluded because they make bad panels. They're excluded because they haven't sold to 6 different banks. A small manufacturer could be making a genuinely solid panel and just not qualify because they haven't hit that specific bank financing threshold yet. Being outside that 2% doesn't mean the panel is bad. It just means the company hasn't checked a very specific financial box. Okay, so if the tier system is more about bank trust than panel quality, what should you actually care about? Let's get into it, because this is where things get real. First, let's talk about where your money actually goes when you buy a solar system. People obsess over panel brand like it's the most important decision in the whole process. But the panel itself is only about 12 to 20% of your total system cost. Let that sink in. You could spend weeks comparing panel brands, arguing in forums, reading spec sheets, and at the end of the day, that panel is the cheapest major part of your entire system. So where does the rest of the money go? Roughly 30 to 50 cents per watt goes to the panel itself. Then you've got the inverter, which runs about 25 to 45 cents per watt. Then racking and mounting hardware, 20 to 35 cents per watt. Then labor, which is 50 cents to $1 per watt. Then permits and design work, 10 to 20 cents per watt. And then, this is a big one, 40 to 80 cents per watt just goes to sales, overhead, and profit margin for the company selling you the system. So when you add all that up, the panel is a small slice of a much bigger pie. Most of your money is going to labor, financing structure, and company overhead. Meanwhile, people are spending all their energy debating panel brand when the bigger financial risk and the bigger cost is sitting somewhere else entirely. And speaking of risk, here's the part that should really change how you think about all of this. Tier 1 status does not protect you from a company going bankrupt. I want to say that again because it's the whole point of this video. Being Tier 1 does not mean the company will still be around in 10 or 20 years. In 2026, Freedom Forever, one of the largest residential solar installers in the entire country, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. This wasn't some tiny startup. This was one of the biggest names in the industry. SunPower, another major, well-known brand, filed for bankruptcy as well. Pink Energy grew fast, failed to honor its warranties, and eventually collapsed under the weight of lawsuits from customers across multiple states who said they were misled and given defective equipment. And there's DC Solar, which was shut down because it turned out to be an outright Ponzi scheme. Overall, there have been more than 100 solar company bankruptcies tracked in recent years. In one particularly bad stretch, there was a 6-fold increase in residential solar installer bankruptcies compared to the previous 5 years combined. California got hit especially hard, with an 80% drop in rooftop solar installations and over 17,000 industry layoffs, tied to changes in how the state pays homeowners for the extra power they send back to the grid. Here's why this matters so much for your warranty. Your solar system actually comes with 2 separate types of warranty. There's the manufacturer's warranty on the actual panel, and there's the installer's workmanship warranty, which covers the labor and the install itself. These are 2 completely different things, from 2 completely different companies. If your installer goes out of business, the manufacturer's warranty on the panel technically still exists on paper, but now you have to deal with it yourself. You have to contact the manufacturer directly, and you have to find and pay for a new certified installer to actually do any repair or replacement work, since the original installer isn't around anymore to help you with the process. But if the manufacturer itself goes bankrupt, that's a much bigger problem. Your warranty becomes what's called an unsecured claim in bankruptcy court. That basically means it gets treated the same as any other unpaid bill the company owes. You're standing in line with every other creditor, and the reality is these claims often get paid out at just pennies on the dollar, if they get paid out at all. There's actually a famous case with a company called Solyndra, where the manufacturer went bankrupt and tried to set aside money for warranty claims, but it wasn't even up to the company anymore. It was up to a bankruptcy court and a group of creditors to decide what, if anything, homeowners would actually get. So think about what this means. A company can hit every single Tier 1 requirement, sell to 6 banks, get financed on 6 major projects, earn that label everyone trusts, and still end up in bankruptcy court a few years later, leaving your 25-year warranty as basically a piece of paper with no real backing behind it. Now let's talk about another area where people get talked into paying more money for something that barely matters to them. Bifacial panels. Bifacial panels capture sunlight on both sides, the front and the back, and they're often marketed as a premium upgrade. And in certain situations, they genuinely are worth it. If you've got a big ground-mounted system, especially somewhere that gets snow, the sunlight bounces off the snow and hits the back of the panel, giving you a real energy boost, sometimes as much as 38% more in the winter months, specifically because of that snow reflection. But here's what most people don't realize. If you've got a normal residential roof with regular dark shingles, which is what most homes in America actually have, the gain from a bifacial panel is only about 2 to 5%. That's it. 2 to 5% more power for a panel that often costs more money. For most homeowners on a standard sloped roof, that premium upgrade barely moves the needle. It only really makes sense if you've got a ground mount, an elevated structure, or a light-colored surface that can actually reflect light back onto the panel. So if a salesperson is pushing bifacial panels on you for a normal roof installation, you're likely paying extra for a feature that's not going to do much for your actual house. Now here's something that adds even more urgency to this whole conversation. And honestly, most people arguing about panel brands online haven't even caught up to this yet. The federal tax credit that covered 30% of your solar costs expired on December 31st, 2025. That credit is gone for anyone paying with cash or a loan in 2026. The only federal incentive left applies to lease systems or power purchase agreements, where a third party owns the system instead of you, and even that pathway is set to expire for new projects after July 4th, 2026. What this means in practical terms is that solar in 2026 is costing homeowners roughly 43% more out of pocket than it did for someone buying the exact same system back in 2024, simply because that tax credit isn't there to offset the cost anymore. That's a massive shift in the math. And it's a bigger factor in your total cost than whatever brand of panel ends up on your roof. So let's bring this all together, because I know we've covered a lot. Tier 1 is not a quality rating. It's a bank financing rating created by Bloomberg to help lenders decide whether a company is safe to finance large projects with. Only about 2% of manufacturers qualify, not because the other 98% make bad panels, but because they haven't met a specific bank financing threshold. The panel itself is only 12 to 20% of your total system cost, which means most of your money and most of your real risk is sitting somewhere else in labor, financing, and company overhead. Even Tier 1 companies can go bankrupt. Freedom Forever, SunPower, and others prove that a bankable rating today does not guarantee a company is still standing in 10 or 20 years. And if that happens, your warranty can end up worth far less than you think, especially if the manufacturer itself is the one that collapses. Bifacial panels are a real upgrade in the right setting, like ground mounts or snowy climates, but on a typical roof, they only add 2 to 5% more power, which usually isn't worth chasing as some kind of premium feature. And on top of all of that, the federal tax credit that used to make solar math work for a lot of people expired at the end of 2025, which is a bigger financial shift than any brand comparison you'll ever make. So the next time someone tells you to only buy Tier 1 panels, you'll know exactly what that label really means, and more importantly, what it doesn't mean. It's not about picking the perfect brand. It's about understanding where your money is actually going, understanding what your warranty really protects, and not getting distracted by a label that was built for banks, not for homeowners. If you want to go even deeper into any of this, there's more info waiting for you in the description below.